the very first installment of this forgiveness, of this study on forgiveness, Pastor talked about it as a give and a take kind of system in the kingdom.
Yeah.
When you give it, when you give forgiveness, if I can use that word like that, when you choose to forgive someone, you too also receives. It's like you are opening the door for yourself to receive
forgiven.
it, to be forgiven.
More or
So
less,
that
whatever you sow,
you will reap. So it's like, okay, if I must demand this thing, I must also be willing to give it. So if I'm not willing to give it, then I have no right, no moral right, no spiritual right to demand also it from God.
yeah,
That, Father, forgive me. On what grounds? And we'll see that in the scripture.
yeah,
And then in the book of Matthew, where a servant, he was owing his master, and he cried out for mercy, and he was forgiven.
yeah,
And he saw a fellow servant like himself, and he apprehended him and said, you know what, you are not going to go today until you pay me. And that made him also to get into prison, because everybody that knew that you just received mercy from, you just received forgiveness from the master. Why would you do this to a fellow servant like yourself? Made them to go and report back to the master, and the master said, you know what, you are a wicked servant. You received forgiveness from me. Why shouldn't you also be willing to forgive?
To forgive. Why?
Shouldn't be hard.
Why?
We feel that, okay, God is big,
He's magnanimous,
so he
he's
can
God all by
accommodate
himself.
everything. So I'm human.
I'm human.
But when you wrong God, you can go and meet him and say, Father, can't you also go and meet that same Father and say, Father, give me the grace
To forgive.
to be able to forgive.
But even in running to forgive, even in running to God to forgive, right? Even when someone offends another person, you also expect the person to forgive you. So if you expect people to forgive you, it means that you have that faith that they have the moral stature to forgive you. And that moral stature is in every single person, because we are made in his image and in his likeness. So where she quoted was Matthew 18, somewhere from verse 21 to 35. We had read that scripture quite a number of times in the course of this study. And while she was saying that, this scripture came to me in my mind. Matthew chapter 5 verse 7. Matthew chapter 5 verse 7. Matthew chapter 5 verse 7. Don't forget that God has said from the beginning in Genesis 8:22 that as long as this earth remains, seed time and harvest shall not cease.